Sir, I'm asking you one last time, get out of the pool. Blue and red lights blinked across the water like angry fish. A police SUV idled by the fence. A lifeguard whistle shrieked, even though there was no lifeguard on duty. Karen, the HOA board member who wore a visor like a helmet and carried a clipboard like a sword, stood with her chin high and her finger pointed straight at me. You don't live here, she said. You don't have a valid key fob. You are trespassing in our Lake Ridge HOA pool. Leave now or be arrested. I was standing waist deep in the cool blue water, a soft ripple touching my stomach. The late afternoon sun warmed my shoulders. Kids had stopped playing. Parents had pulled them to the shallow end. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I'm not leaving, I said, calm and clear. Two officers walked in through the gate that Karen had opened with a dramatic flourish. One officer rested his hands on his belt. The other looked at Karen, then at me. Sir, we got a call, the first officer said. You refusing to leave? I'm not refusing to follow the law, I answered. I'm refusing to obey a rule that's being used to bully people. Karen clucked her tongue. He is not a resident, she said. He is lying. He doesn't belong here. The officer nodded slowly. Okay, he said to me. Step out of the water so we can talk. Water whispered off my swim trunks as I walked to the steps. I could feel the eyes of the whole pool on my back. Mothers, fathers, teenagers, a gray-haired man who brought a book every day, and two little boys who had been practicing cannonballs until Karen told them splashing was a violation. My heart beat steady. I had promised myself I would stay kind. I had promised myself I would be patient. But I was also done being pushed. I stood at the edge and looked the officer in the eyes. I'm not leaving this pool, I said, because... My phone buzzed in the towel on my chair. Karen's visor glinted. The officer waited. In that small pause, the whole world seemed to lean forward. Because I built it. The words were air and stone at the same time. They lifted me. They weighed everything down. Karen's mouth opened like a door with broken hinges. The officer blinked. Excuse me? He said. And that was when the second officer's radio crackled and he lifted a hand to his ear. Hold on, he said to us. Dispatch is saying... But before he finished, a high, tight scream cut across the water. Everyone turned toward the deep end, where a pink foam noodle drifted in circles with no kid attached. A tiny hand slapped at the surface and disappeared. Help! A woman shouted. Somebody! My daughter! The officer spun. Karen froze. I dove. That was the moment everything changed, and it is where I will leave you hanging for a second because big moments don't happen in a vacuum. They grow from a lot of small moments. So let me tell you how we got here. I moved to Lake Ridge in early spring when the trees around the lake were just a soft green fuzz and the geese walked like they owned the sidewalks. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm an American guy with a toolbox in my truck, a scar on my thumb from a high school shop class, and a quieter heart than most people expect. For 15 years I worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company. We built parks, trails, and yes, pools. I loved the work. I loved seeing families enjoy the thing we made, but I never stuck around after ribbon cuttings. We'd finish, clean up, and drive to the next job. Lake Ridge was meant to be my rest. My sister Rachel lived 20 minutes away. My nephew Aiden is 8 and thinks every frog is his friend. I bought a small house on Birch Loop, a short walk from the lake and a shorter walk from the community pool. It was the pool that caught my eye when I toured the neighborhood for the first time. The curve of it, the way the shallow end spread like a smile, the sun decks, the shade, the splash of it all. I knew those curves. I had drawn those curves on a set of plans 3 summers ago. But nobody in the sales office mentioned my company. The HOA had hired us through the developer, and the developer had handled all the public talk. That was fine with me. I moved in with a few boxes, a coffee maker, and a used grill. I introduced myself to neighbors by name and by hand. Ethan, I said. Nice to meet you. Need help with anything? I meant it. I like helping. It's slower than minding your own business, but it's warmer too. On my first Saturday, Mr. Harris across the street was wrestling with stubborn leaves in his gutter. He is 74, with kind eyes and a back brace he calls the hug from behind. I got my ladder, climbed up, and cleaned the whole line. Mr. Harris insisted on paying me with a warm Pepsi and a story about how he once met a famous baseball player in Ohio, which I think was worth more than money. The next week, I repaired the hinge on a broken gate at the little park by the mailboxes. I sent the HOA a friendly email with pictures and a note. Happy to help if you all need extra hands. I'm new here, and just want to keep things looking nice. A reply came back from a general inbox. Thank you for your message. Please refer to the rule book before making any changes to HOA property. All repairs must be requested through the portal. No name, no smile, just rules. That was my first taste of the HOA tone. Then I met the voice behind it. She introduced herself at the pool, which felt ironic later. She walked up while I was showing Aiden how to blow bubbles with his face in the water. She had a neat stack of papers and a key fob hanging from a lanyard like a sheriff's badge. "I'm Karen Whitfield," she said. "I'm on the board. We're very proud of our standards here." "Nice to meet you," I said, lifting Aiden so he could wave. "I'm Ethan from Birch Loop. This is my nephew. He's excited to try the slide." Karen glanced at the slide as if it were a strange animal she had not fully approved. "Please make sure to read the pool rules," she said, tapping the page in her stack. "No running, no glass, no loud music, and no guests without a guest pass purchased 24 hours in advance." "I did read them," I said. "I bought a guest pass online this morning." Her smile was quick and tight. "Next time, please do it a day earlier." Aiden didn't hear any of that. He was busy making his face into a seal. We swam, we laughed, we picked up a stray snack wrapper by the gate on the way out. I thought that was that. It wasn't. The next day, a yellow slip appeared on my door. "Violation notice," it read. I had left my trash can visible from the street for 4 hours after pickup, which was against the rules. I was new. I had missed the exact time window in the handbook. I paid the small fine, shook my head, and set a reminder on my phone. Then came a letter about my mailbox being slightly the wrong shade of black. Black has shades? Apparently, yes. I bought the paint they recommended and fixed it. Then, one evening, I brought donuts to the pool for the kids who were learning to swim. I asked parents first. The kids were thrilled. Karen walked over and picked up a donut like it was evidence in a crime show. "No outside food," she said. "Really?" I asked. "Even if parents say it's okay?" She pointed to a line on the rule poster, very small in the corner. "No food inside the pool fence unless approved by the board." I looked around. Half the people had snacks. I smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't see that. We can eat them outside the fence." Karen gave me another tight smile and wrote something in a notebook. I kept trying to lead with kindness. When I mowed my lawn, I edged Mr. Harris's curb too. When a storm blew a big branch across the sidewalk, I sawed it up and hauled it away. When a teen's bike chain popped off, I got my tools and popped it back on. Still, the notices kept coming, like tiny paper raindrops that were somehow both dry and cold. Decorative flag exceeds the permitted dimensions. Front porch light bulb too bright for community guidelines. Garden hose must be stored on approved reel. It wasn't just me. My neighbor Jessica, a nurse who worked long shifts, got a warning because her grass was 1 inch past the standard height, the week her car wouldn't start. A new family on Cedar Way got scolded for chalk art on their driveway. Chalk. Art. It washes off with rain and laughter. We all talked about it in quiet voices by the mailboxes and in louder voices on a neighborhood group chat. Some folks said, "Rules are rules." Others, like me, believed rules should help people live well, not make them scared to breathe. When summer really opened up and the lake smelled like sunshine, the pool became the center of everything. Kids in swim diapers, dads with sunscreen on their noses, moms with big hats and paperbacks, teenagers who thought whispering was a myth. I went most afternoons. I swam laps. I floated. I watched the clouds change shape. Sometimes I watched the pool itself, the way the water rolled over the drainage lip and fell soft onto the tiles. I could see the work we had done years ago. The rebar, the forms, the gunite, the plaster. I could see the care we took in the angles so the shallow water was safe, and the deep water was true. I could tell where the sun warmed the deck first. It felt like visiting an old friend who didn't know my name. One Tuesday, the key fob reader beeped red when I touched it. "That's weird," I said. I tried again. Red. The gate didn't click. Another resident, Tom, held the door for me. "Thanks," I said. We swam. It was a nice day. On Wednesday, the reader was still red. A small note had appeared. "Fob malfunctions? Contact HOA." I emailed. No answer. I called. A recorded voice told me to submit a ticket through the portal. I submitted a ticket. The portal told me to wait 3 to 5 business days. On Thursday, Karen appeared like a storm cloud. "Your fob is deactivated," she said. "Why?" I asked. "Your account has flags." "What flags?" She wouldn't say. "You may not enter until the board reviews your status." "My dues are paid," I said. "I paid the mailbox paint fine. I paid the trash can fine. I even bought donuts I wasn't allowed to share." She pursed her lips. "Please step away from the gate." I stepped away. I didn't push. I didn't shout. I went home and wrote a letter. Not an angry letter. A true one. "Dear Board," I typed. "My name is Ethan Miller. I moved in this spring. I believe the pool should be a place of joy and community. I have followed the rules in good faith. I am asking kindly for my key fob to be reactivated. More than that, I am asking that we treat each other like neighbors. Rules help. Kindness helps more. If you need help with repairs or cleanups, I will volunteer. If there is a misunderstanding, I will listen. Please listen too. I printed it. I signed it. I slid it under the HOA office door with a small box of muffins from the bakery on Main. No donuts. I am a quick learner. Friday came. No response. Saturday came. No response. Sunday afternoon, the temperature hit. We deserve the pool levels. I walked down with a towel over my shoulder, my nephew bouncing beside me like a rubber ball. We'll talk to them if they say no, I told him. We will be calm. We will be kind. We will tell the truth. At the gate, the fob beeped red again. Karen was there, of course, like a lighthouse that warned ships only after they hit the rocks. No entry, she said. My dues are paid, I said, steady. Your fob is inactive pending review. How long is pending? As long as it takes, she said. Behind her, the pool sparkled and laughed. A toddler splashed his own feet and cheered. A lifeguard chair sat empty because we didn't have lifeguards on weekends yet. My nephew stared through the fence like a kid looking into a candy store. I felt something push in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just a strong, simple line. This is not right. I put my hand on the gate. We're going in to swim, I said. We are not causing trouble. We are being neighbors. If you want to talk to me, I'll be in the shallow end practicing kicks with Aiden. Karen's eyes flashed. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police, she said. You don't have to, I said. We can talk. But she already had the phone to her ear. Yes, hello, she said. There is a trespasser at the Lake Ridge HOA pool. He refuses to leave. We need officers immediately. The gate clicked open as a family walked out. I held it for my nephew. We said, excuse me, to everyone. We took off our sandals. We stepped into the water. It felt like forgiveness. We swam gently. We didn't splash on purpose. We helped a little boy find his goggles. We kept to ourselves. 10 minutes later, the police SUV rolled up, lights bright, siren off. Karen stood tall at the gate with her clipboard, like a general waiting for reinforcements. The officers came in. The high scene you saw at the start unfolded, their calm voices, my calm answer, the small crowd. You already know that part. What you don't know yet is what happened the moment after I said, I built it. I didn't mean I built it alone with my hands and a shovel. I meant I led the team that shaped this space and made it safe, with care and skill and early mornings and late nights. I meant I knew every bolt that held the ladder to the deck. I meant I knew this pool like a teacher knows a classroom. But my words landed hard and strange. Karen's eyebrows hopped. The officer tilted his head like a dog hearing a whistle. And then the scream at the deep end sliced through all of that. The world shrank to a small circle of need. A little girl's hand popped up and vanished. You don't think in moments like that. You move. I dove. The water closed over my head with a cool thump. Underneath, the world was quiet and quick. I saw a flash of a pink swimsuit and hair floating like brown grass. I reached. I grabbed an arm and turned her so her face was up. Her eyes were wide and scared. Bubbles escaped her mouth and nose. I kicked hard and rose. Got her! I heard someone shout. I kept her chin above water and swam for the wall. Hands reached down. Her mother, 2 teens, the officer without the radio. We lifted the girl onto the deck. She coughed and cried and then coughed again. The sound was beautiful. It sounded like life coming back. Sweetheart. Her mom sobbed, pulling the girl into her lap. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Give her space, I said softly. Let her cough. She's okay. The officer knelt beside them. He looked at me, water dripping off my hair onto my nose. You know what you're doing, he said. I've done this before, I answered. It wasn't bravado. It was true. When you build pools, you train for emergencies. You learn to scan water and move fast. Safety isn't a sticker you slap on a gate. It's a habit you keep. Karen stood 3 feet away, frozen, her clipboard now at her side. For a long second, she didn't speak. Then she gathered herself like a person picking up spilled papers. This doesn't change the fact, she began. The officer stood up slowly. Ma'am, he said, and his voice was a little firmer now. Let's take a breath. I stepped back to give the family room. The pool had gone silent again. Even the kids who didn't understand felt the weight of something important. The girl's coughs turned to hiccups. Her mother kept saying thank you like it was the only word left. Kindness doesn't fix everything, but it clears the fog. For a minute there, we were all just people. Not board members and residents, not rule keepers and rule breakers. Just people in the sun, grateful for breath. The officer looked at me again. You said you built this pool, he said, curious now, not suspicious. I led the project, I said. 3 summers ago. We poured the deck in 2 long days because a storm was coming. We put in the zero entry slope so toddlers could walk in like a beach. We added the bench there in the deep end so older folks could rest. We wanted it to feel welcoming. Karen swallowed. Anyone could say that, she muttered, but it sounded more like she was talking to herself. Check the plaque, I said. It's small, by the gate. It has the construction company name and the project manager initials, EM. I didn't ask for that. The developer put it there. The second officer, the one with the radio, walked over to the gate, leaned down and squinted. He wiped the little bronze rectangle with his thumb. Then he read it out loud. Lake Ridge Community Pool, he said. Completed July 20th. Yeah, 3 years ago. Contractor, Northline Build Group. Project manager, EM. Heads turned toward me. My wet shirt clung to my chest. I couldn't help it. I smiled. Not a smirk. Not a victory grin. Just a small, quiet smile of someone who loves a thing and is glad it exists. The first officer let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, trying to be professional. Well, he said, that's something. Karen's visor seemed to shrink. Even if that's true, she said, it does not mean he can ignore the rules. We have procedures, we have approvals. We have... She waved the clipboard like it was a magic wand. We also have common sense, the officer said gently. I lifted my hands. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm here to swim with my nephew. Help when help is needed. And be a good neighbor. That's all. For a heartbeat, it felt like the day might soften and close with a good ending. The girl was breathing fine now. Her mom held her hand. A few people even clapped once, then looked at their own hands like, did I just clap at a pool? The water started to sound like water again. That's when Karen took a step toward me and did something that turned a complicated situation into an extreme one. She pulled out a folded paper with a red stamp across the top and held it up like a flag. As acting president of the HOA, she declared, her voice loud and sharp, I am issuing a formal no trespass order against Ethan Miller effective immediately. If he does not leave the pool deck within 60 seconds, officers, I request that you arrest him and remove him in handcuffs. The air snapped. People gasped. Aiden grabbed my hand. The officer's eyes widened. He looked from Karen to me and back again, his training and his patience bumping into each other. Ma'am, he said carefully, that is an extreme step. It's necessary, Karen said, chin high, clipboard clutched, visor tilted like a crown. He is dangerous to our community's standards. He thinks he is above the rules. I took a slow breath. My heart didn't pound, it planted. I thought about Mr. Harris's gutters, Jessica's grass, the chalk art, the tiny plaque by the gate, the little girl's cough turning to a laugh. I thought about kindness, how it can be strong. I squeezed Aiden's hand and let go so he could stand behind me. Officer, I said, steady and clear. Before you put your hands on me, I need you to hear one more truth about this pool and about what's happening in this neighborhood. He nodded once. Say it. I opened my mouth to speak, and the officer's radio exploded with noise, and 3 more HOA board members burst through the gate, papers in their hands, faces flushed, one of them shouting, Karen, stop! You can't issue that without a board vote. The officer reached for his cuffs anyway because once a thing starts rolling downhill, it wants to keep going. That was when the chapter turns. Where are you watching from? The officer's hand hovered near his cuffs. Karen's clipboard shook like a rattling tambourine, and the crowd leaned in with eyes wide. My nephew squeezed my wrist so tight his fingernails pressed into my skin. And just as the tension snapped like a guitar string about to break, the HOA board members pushed through the gate, waving their papers like surrender flags in a storm. Karen, stop! One of them shouted, his tie crooked and his face red from the summer heat. You can't just issue a no trespass order on your own. Another woman, tall with gray streaks in her bun, was already wagging her finger at Karen. We never voted on this. You're overstepping again. The officers froze. One lowered his hand away from his belt. The other raised his brows, almost relieved that someone else had stepped into the spotlight. Karen, though, wasn't backing down. Her lips tightened, her visor tilted forward like armor, and her clipboard smacked against her palm. I am acting president, she hissed. This community is falling apart because people don't follow rules. If I don't stand firm, who will? The man with the crooked tie pointed toward me. You're trying to throw out the very guy who just saved a child's life. Do you even hear yourself? The crowd murmured. A ripple of voices passed through the pool deck. Some nodded, some whispered, some held their kids tighter. I could feel the weight of their opinions shifting like the whole neighborhood was balancing on a seesaw. The officer cleared his throat. Okay, he said carefully. Let's slow this down. We don't make arrests unless there's clear cause. Seems like your board needs to sort out its business. Karen turned to me. her face pale but her eyes still sharp. "You don't belong here," she said. "You've been nothing but trouble since you moved in." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't point fingers. I just looked at her and said, "I belong here as much as anyone else, maybe more than you think." The words hung in the air like a banner no one could pull down. The officer gestured for us to take a step apart. "Let's hear both sides," he said. "Ma'am, you'll get your chance. Sir, you'll get yours." But before anyone could speak, the little girl who had nearly drowned squeaked out a word, still coughing into her mother's shoulder. "Thank you." She lifted her hand and pointed at me. "Thank you, mister." Her voice was weak, but it was louder than Karen's whole clipboard. Every head turned back toward her. Her mother sobbed and kissed her hair, whispering that she was safe now. People clapped, not awkward this time, but firm, like they were clapping for more than a rescue. They were clapping for relief, for kindness, for decency. And that moment, simple, human, undeniable, tipped the scale. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked around for support, but even the board members who once stood behind her were stepping aside. The crooked tie man folded his arms. The woman with the gray bun shook her head slowly. The crowd wasn't hers anymore. That was the high point, the extreme moment where everything seemed like it might turn toward the better. But life doesn't move in straight lines. It curves. It dips. It surprises you, because the next morning when I went to check my mailbox, there was another yellow slip waiting for me. Another violation. And this one was worse than all the others combined. It said, "Unauthorized use of HOA property. Possible fine, $5,000. $5,000. I stood there on the curb, paper trembling in my hand, the sound of sprinklers hissing down the street. My neighbor Jessica, still in her scrubs from the night shift, walked past and saw my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I showed her the slip. Her jaw dropped. "They can't do that," she whispered. "That's insane." But the paper in my hand said otherwise. It was official, stamped, signed. And I knew right then, Karen wasn't finished. She had just started. The paper in my hand felt heavier than it should have. $5,000. Not 50. Not 500. 5,000. That was more than my mortgage payment, more than the savings I had tucked away after years of managing projects and trying to live sensibly. It wasn't just a fine, it was a weapon, and Karen had aimed it straight at me. The morning air smelled of cut grass and lake water. A lawnmower buzzed in the distance, and a dog barked down Birch Loop. Life went on in its regular rhythm, but for me everything had tilted. I stood at the curb, gripping the violation slip so hard the edges cut into my palm. "Are you okay?" Jessica asked again. She had dark circles under her eyes, the kind only a night shift nurse knows, and her scrubs were wrinkled from 12 hours on her feet. "No," I said, honest and flat. "I think Karen's trying to bury me." Jessica reached out and touched the slip like it might burn her. "This isn't right," she whispered. "We all saw what happened at the pool. You saved that little girl. You don't deserve this." But deserving had nothing to do with it. Rules, twisted the wrong way, could be used like chains. And Karen knew how to twist. I went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the fine notice. I read it once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. Unauthorized use of HOA property. Community pool access while fob was deactivated. Fine $5,000. Due within 30 days. Failure to pay will result in legal action. Legal action. My stomach sank. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the HOA portal. There it was, blinking red at the top of my account page. Balance due. $5,000. No appeal button. No explanation. Just a demand. For a moment, I thought about paying it just to make it go away. But then I pictured Mr. Harris, struggling with his back brace, receiving one of these slips because his grass grew an inch too tall. I pictured Jessica, exhausted from saving real lives at the hospital, fined because she couldn't pull her trash can in on time. I pictured those kids with their chalk art, their joy erased with the threat of a fee. No, I wasn't going to pay, but I couldn't fight alone either. That evening, I walked across the street to Mr. Harris's house. His porch light flickered, probably the bulb again, and he was sitting in his rocker with a glass of sweet tea. "Evening, Ethan," he said, tipping his glass. "You look like someone stole your tools." I sat down on the step and showed him the fine. His bushy eyebrows shot up. $5,000 for swimming? "Not just swimming," I said. "For standing up to Karen." He let out a long whistle. "Son, that's robbery in daylight." "I need to fight this," I said. "But I can't be the only one. They'll crush me if I'm alone." Mr. Harris rocked back and forth, his chair creaking like an old ship. "You're not alone," he said finally. "Plenty of us are tired of her nonsense. She acts like she owns this place, but she doesn't." Jessica joined us a few minutes later carrying a takeout box of fried chicken she hadn't had the appetite to eat. She listened, nodded, and then said, "We need a meeting. Not one of their board meetings, our own. A real community meeting. People need to speak up." The idea stuck. The next day, I went door to door. At first I felt awkward, like a salesman with no product. But once I explained why I was knocking, faces changed. People leaned in. People whispered their own stories. The Rodriguez family had been fined because their teenage son parked his car on the street overnight when the driveway was full. The Chens had been cited for having potted plants that didn't match community standards. A young couple said they got a warning letter for leaving a stroller on their porch. Every story was the same: petty rules, harsh enforcement, and Karen at the center. By the time I reached the last house on Cedar Way, I had 20 signatures on a piece of paper I labeled Neighbors for Fairness. 20 households ready to at least listen, maybe more. We set the meeting for Saturday night at my backyard. Mr. Harris said he'd bring extra chairs. Jessica said she'd bring cookies. Tom, the guy who had once held the pool gate open for me, promised to bring a cooler of sodas. It felt small, but it felt like something. Saturday came hot and heavy. The kind of summer evening where the air clings to your skin. I strung up a few old camping lanterns and dragged my grill to the patio. Slowly, people trickled in. First Tom and his wife, then the Rodriguezes with their sleepy toddler, then the Chens, then more. Soon my backyard was buzzing with voices, chairs scraping, kids chasing fireflies. I stood on the deck with the violation notice in my hand. "Thanks for coming," I said, loud enough to hush the chatter. "I know we're all tired. I know we'd rather be anywhere else on a Saturday night, but we need to talk about what's happening in this neighborhood." Heads nodded. Eyes turned serious. I told them about the fine. I told them how Karen had tried to have me arrested at the pool. I told them how my key fob had been deactivated with no explanation. "But this isn't just about me," I said. "It's about all of us. Every one of us has been hit with unfair rules and petty punishments. We pay our dues, but we don't get kindness. We get threats. That has to change." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Yeah." Another clapped. Jessica stepped up beside me. "I work 12-hour shifts at the hospital," she said. "I save lives. And still I come home to notices about my lawn or my trash cans. It's exhausting. We need leaders who care about people, not just rules." Applause broke out, louder this time. Then Mr. Harris stood, using his cane for balance. His voice was gravel, but strong. "I've lived here 20 years. This is my home. I don't need perfection. I need neighbors. I need kindness. Karen forgot what that means. Maybe it's time we remind her." The crowd cheered. Someone chanted, "Fairness, fairness." A kid joined in, then another, until even the adults laughed at the sound of it. For the first time since I moved into Lake Ridge, I felt hope. Real hope. But hope is fragile. As the meeting wound down and people packed up chairs, headlights swept across my yard. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Karen, visor still on even though the sun was long gone. She didn't come alone. 2 other board members climbed out with her, both holding clipboards. Their faces were tight, their mouths pinched. "What is this?" Karen demanded, marching up the driveway. "Unauthorized gathering? Violation of community rules regarding large assemblies? Do you people think you can rewrite the bylaws in someone's backyard?" The crowd went quiet. Parents pulled their kids closer. Jessica crossed her arms. "This is a neighborhood meeting," I said evenly. "We're talking about issues that affect all of us." "This is insubordination," Karen snapped. "HOA business must go through official channels. You don't have the authority to—" "Authority comes from people," Mr. Harris interrupted, his cane planted firmly. "And the people are here." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You're all making a mistake. Rules are rules for a reason. Without them, this community will fall apart. Do you want trash everywhere? Do you want weeds, cars on lawns, barking dogs at midnight? Do you want this neighborhood to turn into chaos?" "No," I said. "We just want fairness, balance, kindness." Karen's jaw tightened. She looked around at the crowd, searching for support, but found only crossed arms and hard stares. For the first time she seemed to falter, but then she pulled out a folded paper, the same red stamp across the top as the fine notice. "You think you can rally people against me?" she said, her voice rising. "Then hear this. Effective immediately, Ethan Miller is banned from all HOA amenities pending legal review. That includes the pool, the lake dock, the clubhouse. Step foot on them again, and I will personally ensure the police escort you out in handcuffs. Gasps erupted. Jessica swore under her breath. Tom muttered, "This is insane." I held the paper, the red stamp glaring in the lantern light. Karen turned sharply, visor catching the glow, and walked back to her SUV. The other board members followed, silent and stiff. The door slammed, the engine roared, and the black SUV disappeared into the night. The crowd was left in stunned silence. And me? I stood on my deck holding yet another piece of paper meant to break me. The fine had been bad. This was worse. Because now it wasn't just about money. It was about freedom. It was about dignity. It was war. The night after Karen stormed away in her black SUV, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles, my mind running faster than my body ever could. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red stamped paper, the word banned, practically carved into my brain. I was banned. Not just from the pool, from everything the HOA controlled. The lake dock where families fished on Sundays, the clubhouse where neighbors celebrated birthdays, even the walking trails that circled the water. In other words, Karen had decided I no longer belonged to the community I had literally helped build. At 2:13 a.m., I sat up, swung my legs over the bed and whispered into the dark, "No, not like this." The next morning, I walked outside to find Jessica already on my porch. She held 2 coffees from the corner shop and looked like she hadn't slept either. "You see this?" she asked, holding up her phone. On the neighborhood Facebook page, Karen had posted a long message. "Attention Lake Ridge residents. A man named Ethan Miller has violated our HOA rules repeatedly and endangered our community. The board has issued a ban from all amenities. Please report any sightings of him at the pool, clubhouse, or dock. Together we must protect our neighborhood standards." Beneath the post were comments. Some supported her. Rules are rules. If he broke them, too bad. Others pushed back. "He saved a little girl's life, Karen. Show some respect." It was a war of words, and my name was the battlefield. Jessica set the coffee on my porch rail. "She's poisoning people against you." "I know. She can't just do this." She already did. But even as I said it, I felt the fight rising in me. She thought she could silence me. She thought she could erase me with paper and ink. But I wasn't going to let her. That evening, I met with Mr. Harris and a few others in his garage. It smelled of motor oil and old wood, and the only light came from a single dangling bulb. But it felt safe, like a war room for people who had nothing but truth on their side. "We need more than meetings," Jessica said. "We need to organize, officially." "You mean like a petition?" Tom asked, leaning on his cooler. "More than that," I said slowly. "We need to show the HOA that their power comes from us, not the other way around. We need numbers, so we planned. We divided streets. Each volunteer would knock on doors, share stories, and collect signatures. Our goal, a community vote to remove Karen and replace her with people who cared about kindness, not control. It was bold. It was risky. But it was the only way forward. The next week was a blur of conversations. I walked more sidewalks in 5 days than I had in 5 months. I heard stories that broke my heart. A widowed woman fined because her son left his truck in her driveway for 2 nights. A veteran scolded for hanging an American flag without board approval. Parents warned that their kid's basketball hoop was a visual nuisance. Each story added fuel to the fire. Each story made the petition grow. By Friday, we had nearly 50 households signed on. But of course, Karen found out. It was Saturday afternoon when it happened. I was at the mailbox, sorting through bills, when the roar of a car engine made me look up. Karen's black SUV screeched to a stop beside me. The window rolled down and her visor glinted like a weapon. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she hissed. I said nothing. I just held my mail. "You're stirring up trouble, whispering in people's ears, turning good neighbors against me." "Against you?" I said quietly. "Or against unfairness?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're going to regret this. I have friends on the board. I have connections downtown. You think a petition can touch me? I'll bury you in legal fees before you can even file it." And with that, she hit the gas. The SUV roared away, leaving a trail of dust and the smell of burning rubber. I stood there, my heart pounding, the stack of envelopes trembling in my hands. She wasn't bluffing. Karen had power, and she was willing to use every ounce of it. That night, as I was sitting on my porch with Jessica and Mr. Harris, a police cruiser rolled slowly down Birch Loop. It stopped in front of my house. The officer stepped out. Not the same ones from the pool. This was a new face, young, serious, his hand resting near his belt. "Mr. Miller?" he asked. "Yes." He held up a paper. You've been served. It was a cease and desist order, filed by the HOA. It accused me of harassment, defamation, and inciting disorder within the community. If I didn't stop my petition immediately, they threatened to sue me in civil court. Jessica gasped. Mr. Harris muttered, "Good Lord." My hands shook as I read the document under the porch light. It was thick with legal words, designed to scare, designed to silence. But instead of fear, something else spread in me. Fire. I looked up at the officer. Tell whoever filed this that I'm not afraid. This isn't over. He nodded once, not unkindly, and got back in his car. The cruiser rolled away, its red taillights glowing like embers in the dark. And I knew then, Karen had just made her biggest mistake. Because now, it wasn't just about fines or bans. It wasn't just about me. It was about the soul of the whole community. The next morning I gathered everyone in my backyard again. Dozens came. More than before. Some held coffee mugs, some carried kids, all wore the same look. Tired of being pushed, ready for change. I held up the cease and desist letter for all to see. This is what Karen thinks of us, I said. This is how far she'll go to silence anyone who speaks up. She doesn't want fairness. She wants control. But we are not her subjects. We are neighbors, and we are stronger than her paper threats. The crowd roared with approval. Jessica stepped forward, her voice sharp with conviction. If they want to fight, we'll give them one. Legally, publicly, together. And Mr. Harris, leaning on his cane, raised his hand high. Let's show them what community really means. Cheers erupted. It felt less like a meeting and more like a movement. But then, just as the sun dipped low and the energy was at its peak, a shout came from the street. Fire! Fire! We rushed to the front yard. Smoke was curling from the side of the clubhouse across the lake, black and thick against the evening sky. People screamed, cars honked, the air filled with panic. And in that chaos, one terrible thought hit me like a punch in the chest. They're going to blame me. The smoke rose in thick black curls, twisting into the evening sky like a signal no one could ignore. From where we stood on Birch Loop, we could see the glow of flames licking the edge of the Lake Ridge clubhouse roof. People screamed, kids cried. Someone shouted for a fire extinguisher, though it was clear no extinguisher in the world could tame what was already happening. Jessica dropped her coffee mug on the sidewalk, ceramic shattering across the pavement. Oh my God, she whispered, clutching my arm. That's the clubhouse. Mr. Harris gripped his cane so hard his knuckles turned white. Lord have mercy, he muttered. Sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. Red lights flickered against the lake water like restless ghosts. But I didn't need sirens or lights to know the truth that had already settled in my stomach like a stone. This was going to land on me. Neighbors ran toward the clubhouse, some trying to help, others just desperate to see. I joined them, sprinting down the path with Jessica beside me. Heat rolled off the building as we got closer, thick and angry. A corner of the roof collapsed with a crack like a tree splitting in a storm. Everyone back, a man shouted. Stay back. The fire trucks arrived, brakes squealing, hoses uncoiling. Firefighters in heavy gear surged forward, their shouts drowned out by the roar of water pounding against flames. Steam rose in choking clouds. I stood there, chest heaving, watching the place I had walked past 100 times, the place where kids celebrated birthdays and seniors played bingo, being swallowed by fire. And then I heard her voice. Karen. She was standing on the far side of the crowd, visor tilted low, clipboard clutched against her chest even now. Her voice was sharp, carrying over the chaos. This is his doing, she yelled, pointing at me. He's been attacking the HOA, stirring up anger, threatening our community, and now, look, the clubhouse is burning. Heads turned. Eyes landed on me, some full of doubt, some already full of judgment. I stepped forward, raising my voice over the crackle of fire and rush of hoses. I didn't do this, I shouted. I would never do this. But the seed had been planted, and once a seed like that is planted, it grows fast. By the time the fire was under control, the clubhouse was half a skeleton. Smoke still poured from the roof, but the worst was over. Neighbors gathered in tight knots, whispering, glancing at me, glancing at Karen. The fire chief walked past, his face streaked with soot. We'll need to investigate, he told us. Too early to know what started it. Could be electrical, could be anything. Karen pounced. Or it could be arson, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her eyes drilled into me. And we all know who has the motive. I opened my mouth, but Jessica stepped in front of me. That's enough, Karen, she snapped. You can't just accuse people without proof. Karen's smile was tight, satisfied. Proof will come, she said. It always does. And with that she walked away, leaving a trail of suspicion in her wake. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. The fire department cordoned off the clubhouse with yellow tape. Investigators came and went, carrying clipboards, snapping photos, asking questions. Word spread fast, faster than truth ever could. At the grocery store, people stared. At the gas station, someone muttered under their breath as I walked past. Online, the neighborhood Facebook page was a battlefield again. If Ethan didn't do it, then who did? Seems suspicious, all his trouble with the HOA and then suddenly a fire. He saved a little girl. Doesn't sound like someone who'd set fires. Don't be fooled. Heroes can be liars too. Every ping of a notification felt like another stone thrown at my house. But in the middle of all that noise, there were voices that stood with me. Jessica, always by my side. Mr. Harris, who kept reminding anyone who'd listen that I was a good neighbor. The Rodriguezes, the Chens, Tom. People I had helped in small ways. People who believed in fairness. Still, doubt is heavy. And some nights, lying awake, I wondered if Karen would win. Not because she was right, but because she was loud. One afternoon, as I was working in my garage, a knock rattled the door. When I opened it, 2 men in suits stood there, badges flashing at their belts. "Mr. Miller?" one asked. "Yes." "We're with the County Fire Investigation Unit. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the night of the clubhouse fire." My stomach tightened, but I nodded. "Of course. Come in." They sat at my workbench, notebooks open. "Where were you that evening?" one asked. "Here," I said. "In my backyard with neighbors. We were holding a community meeting." "How many people can confirm that?" "Dozens," I said. "Half the neighborhood was there." The second man scribbled in his notebook. "Did you have any disagreements with the HOA?" I let out a humorless laugh. Disagreements is a polite word. Karen's been targeting me since I moved in. Fines, bans, now this. They exchanged a glance. "Did you set the fire?" the first man asked bluntly. "No," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "I didn't. I would never." They studied me for a moment, then closed their notebooks. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Miller. We'll be in touch." When they left, I sat there in the garage, the smell of motor oil thick in the air, and realized the truth. This wasn't just about fines or bans anymore. Karen had escalated it to something bigger, something darker. She wasn't just trying to silence me, she was trying to destroy me. That night I walked down to the lake. The water was calm, the moon reflecting silver across the surface. I stood at the dock, the same dock I was banned from, and let the silence soak into me. I thought about giving up, about selling the house, moving somewhere quiet or somewhere without HOAs or visors or clipboards. I thought about how easy it would be to walk away. But then I remembered the little girl's cough turning into a laugh. I remembered Mr. Harris's shaky voice saying he just wanted kindness. I remembered Jessica standing in front of me, unafraid of Karen's wrath. And I knew I couldn't run. Not because of pride, not because of ego, but because people were counting on me. The very next morning I printed 50 more copies of the petition. If Karen wanted a war, then a war she would get. The following Saturday we gathered again, this time at Tom's backyard to avoid prying eyes. The petition had grown. Over 70 households had signed now. The energy was electric, stronger than ever. "We're close," Jessica said, her eyes shining. "If we get just 30 more, that's a majority. We can call for a special election. We can vote Karen out." Cheers went up. But then the side gate banged open. Karen walked in, flanked by 2 police officers. Her visor cast a shadow over her face, but her smile was sharp as glass. "This little rebellion ends tonight," she said. She turned to the officers and pointed at me. "Arrest him." The backyard froze. Soda cans halfway to mouths, kids mid-giggle, neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder. All turned into statues as Karen's words cut through the air. "Arrest him." Her finger was a dagger, pointed right at me. The 2 officers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a younger man with cropped blonde hair, glanced around at the stunned faces. The other, older and heavier, adjusted his belt and cleared his throat. "Ma'am," the older officer said. "What's the charge?" Karen's visor glinted beneath the porch light as she thrust a folder into his hand. "Harassment, inciting disorder, trespassing after being banned. It's all documented here. The HOA board has filed the paperwork. He's a danger to our community." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jessica gasped. Mr. Harris tried to rise, his cane slipping on the grass. I stood slowly, keeping my voice calm. "Officers, I haven't broken any laws. Talking to my neighbors in their yard isn't a crime." "Don't listen to him," Karen snapped. "He's manipulating you all. He set the clubhouse on fire and now he's trying to overthrow the HOA." "Enough!" Jessica's voice rang out sharp. She stepped between Karen and me, her fists clenched. You can't just accuse someone without proof. The younger officer frowned. About the fire, there's still an investigation. We don't have any suspect identified yet. Karen's lips curled. Well, I do. And you'll see soon enough that I'm right. The older officer sighed, flipping through the papers Karen had shoved at him. Ma'am, these look like HOA violation reports, not criminal charges. They're grounds for arrest, Karen shrieked. No, they're not, the officer said firmly. You want him fined? Take it up in civil court, but this, he handed the folder back, isn't something we can act on tonight. The crowd erupted. Some laughed nervously, others clapped. Karen's face turned crimson beneath her visor. You'll regret this, she screamed, her voice cracking. All of you. She spun on her heel and stormed out the gate, nearly tripping on the lawn edging as the officers followed. For a heartbeat, silence lingered. Then Tom raised his soda can and shouted, To Ethan! The backyard exploded with cheers. But I didn't cheer. Because deep inside, I knew Karen wasn't finished. The next morning, I found proof. I was scrolling the HOA portal when I stumbled across a document I wasn't meant to see. It had been mislabeled and posted in the wrong folder. The file was called Emergency Board Strategy, Post-Fire Response. I opened it. My blood ran cold. Inside was a draft letter already prepared for the insurance company, claiming the fire was caused by suspected sabotage from a disgruntled resident. My name wasn't written yet, but the language made it clear who they meant. Worse, the document outlined how the HOA planned to leverage the fire to push through new emergency rules, higher dues, stricter bans, and even a clause giving the president power to suspend homeowner privileges without a vote. This wasn't just about me anymore. Karen was using the fire as fuel to seize total control. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. We had to move fast. That evening I called another meeting, this time at the park under the gazebo where Karen couldn't accuse us of trespassing. Nearly 100 people came, more than ever before. Parents, retirees, young couples, even teenagers clutching sodas. I stood on the bench and held up a printed copy of the leaked document. Neighbors, I said, my voice steady. We thought Karen was just strict. We thought she cared too much about rules. But this shows the truth. She's using the fire to grab power, and she won't stop until she controls every part of our lives. Gasps, shouts, angry murmurs. She can't do that, someone yelled. She already tried, I answered. But she forgot one thing. The HOA only exists because we, the homeowners, allow it. If we stand together, we can vote her out. The gazebo shook with cheers. Jessica stepped forward, her voice sharp as steel. We have enough signatures for a special election. Now we need to show up. Every single one of us. We need to remind Karen who really owns this neighborhood. Mr. Harris raised his cane like a sword. Let's finish this, he roared, and the crowd erupted again. For the first time, I felt the tide turning. But victories have shadows. Because just as the meeting ended, headlights swept across the park. A car door slammed, and there, standing at the edge of the grass, was Karen. Only this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her was a man in a suit with a leather briefcase, and the unmistakable look of a lawyer. Karen's smile was wide, vicious. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. Enjoy your little rebellion, she sneered. Because tomorrow morning, Ethan Miller will be served with a lawsuit for $250,000 in damages. And when I'm through with him, he won't just be banned, he'll be bankrupt. Gasps. Cries. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. And me? I stood frozen, the weight of every eye on me, knowing Karen had just raised the stakes higher than I ever imagined. The word bankrupt echoed in my head long after Karen's SUV disappeared from the park. The crowd had dispersed in uneasy silence, and now I sat at my kitchen table staring at a blank sheet of paper. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. $250,000. That wasn't a fine anymore. That wasn't an HOA warning slip tucked into my mailbox. That was financial ruin. That was my home, my savings, my future, everything, dangling over a cliff. I pressed my palms to my face and breathed hard, the kind of breath you take when you're trying not to fall apart. Jessica called just after midnight. You okay? I almost lied, but my voice cracked. No, I'm not. We'll fight this, she said. Her tone was steady, like she'd already decided for both of us. She's bluffing. No judge is going to side with her when half the neighborhood's behind you. She has money, lawyers, power. I whispered. And you have truth. You have us. For the first time that night I felt a flicker of strength. The next morning, I wasn't surprised when a man in a blazer knocked on my door and handed me a thick envelope. Mr. Ethan Miller? Yes. You've been served. Inside was the lawsuit. The HOA of Lake Ridge vs. Ethan Miller. The charges were as ridiculous as they were terrifying. Defamation, property damage, incitement of unrest, and loss of community trust. Karen had thrown everything at me, hoping at least one claim would stick. I stared at the papers until the words blurred. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Tom. We're with you. Don't give up. Another from Jessica. Meet us at Mr. Harris's at 6. Important. When I arrived that evening, the garage was packed. Neighbors sat on folding chairs, coolers between them, the air thick with determination. Jessica stood at the front, holding her phone like a microphone. Ethan's not in this alone, she announced. Karen thinks she can bury him in lawsuits, but we're not letting that happen. We've already started a legal defense fund. She turned the screen toward me. A GoFundMe page glowed in bold letters. Stand with Ethan. Stand with fairness. Tears burned behind my eyes. Already the fund had over $2,000. Small donations from dozens of neighbors. 10 here, 20 there, 50 from someone who signed only as Grateful Mom. You're not alone, Jessica said again, softer this time. The crowd cheered. Over the next week, support grew. More neighbors donated. Others volunteered time, printing flyers, knocking on doors, organizing carpools to the upcoming special election. It felt like the whole neighborhood had woken up from a long sleep. But Karen didn't sleep either. She doubled down. More violation notices appeared in mailboxes, ridiculous ones. Mailbox too shiny. Garden gnome unapproved. Front porch rug non-compliant. It was obvious retaliation. She flooded the Facebook group with posts calling me a liar, a manipulator, even a criminal. Her allies on the board backed her, echoing her words. And still, we pushed forward. The night of the special election finally came. The community hall downtown was packed. Every chair filled, people standing in the back, voices buzzing like angry bees. At the front sat the HOA board, Karen in her visor, flanked by her allies, papers stacked high in front of her like weapons. The moderator, a neutral attorney hired by the county, explained the rules. Tonight's vote will determine whether the current president remains in office or is removed by majority decision. Homeowners only. 1 vote per household. Karen rose first. Her voice was cold, her words rehearsed. She painted me as a troublemaker, a rebel stirring chaos. The cause of the fire and the downfall of our beloved community. She waved the lawsuit papers in the air, her visor shining under the fluorescent lights. Do you want this man to represent us? She demanded. Or do you want order, safety, and rules that keep us proud? Scattered applause followed, though weaker than she wanted. Then it was my turn. I stood at the podium, my hands gripping the wood so tight my knuckles ached. I looked out at the crowd. The Rodriguezes, the Chens, Jessica, Mr. Harris, Tom, so many others. Their eyes lifted me. I didn't start this fight, I said. But I won't run from it either. This isn't about fines or pools or mailboxes. This is about what kind of neighbors we want to be. Do we want fear? Or do we want kindness? Do we want to live in a place where we're scared of paper slips and threats? Or in a place where we look out for each other? The hall was silent, every word sinking in. I built the pool we all swim in. Not just with concrete and rebar, but with care. Because I wanted families to have joy. I want this neighborhood to feel like that pool. Safe. Welcoming. Ours. That's why I'm standing here tonight. Applause thundered through the hall. People rose to their feet. My throat tightened, but I kept speaking. Rules matter, but people matter more. And if we forget that, then we lose what makes a neighborhood worth living in. When I finished, the applause shook the walls. Even the moderator looked moved. Karen's smile faltered for the first time. The ballots were passed out. One by one, homeowners marked their choices, folded the slips, and dropped them into the box at the front. My hands sweated as the moderator and 2 volunteers counted. Every second stretched like an hour. Finally, the moderator cleared his throat. By a vote of 68 to 42, he said, the motion to remove Karen Whitfield as president of the Lake Ridge HOA has passed. The hall erupted. Cheers, claps, shouts of relief. Jessica hugged me so hard I almost lost my breath. Mr. Harris wiped tears from his eyes. Karen stood frozen, visor trembling on her head, face pale. Then she slammed her clipboard on the table and stormed out without a word. For the first time in months, I felt hope like sunlight after a storm. But hope is never the end of the story. Because just 2 days later, investigators released their report on the clubhouse fire. And what they found changed everything. 2 days after Karen's fall from power, I woke to the sound of pounding on my door. It wasn't the timid knock of a neighbor or the polite tap of a delivery driver. It was heavy. Urgent. I pulled on a shirt and opened the door to find 2 men in navy jackets standing on my porch. Across the front of their coats in bright yellow letters, Fire Investigations Unit. Mr. Miller? The taller one asked. Yes? We've completed our investigation into the clubhouse fire. We'd like a word. The knot in my stomach tightened. Behind them, Jessica was watering her plants across the street. She saw the jackets, dropped her watering can, and rushed over. What's going on? She asked, her eyes darting between me and the investigators. Let's sit, the shorter man said. His tone was calm, but grave. We sat on the porch steps. I could feel the weight of every second, like time had doubled its gravity. The taller man flipped through a small notebook. The fire was not electrical, nor was it accidental. It was deliberately set. My chest seized. You're saying it was arson? Yes, he said. And we've identified the point of origin. An accelerant was poured along the back storage shed, ignited by a lighter. It was intentional. Jessica's hand shot to her mouth. Oh my God. The shorter investigator leaned forward. Mr. Miller, you've been accused publicly of having a motive, but we've reviewed footage from the security camera mounted on the maintenance building. I froze. My throat went dry. The taller man looked me square in the eye. You weren't there. In fact, the footage shows someone else entirely. My heart slammed. Who? They exchanged a glance. The shorter man pulled a photo from a folder and handed it to me. Grainy, but clear enough. A figure pouring something against the wall. A familiar outline. It wasn't me. It was Karen. Jessica gasped. Oh my lord. The investigator nodded. We'll be filing charges. This is a serious matter. Arson, insurance fraud, endangerment. She won't be walking away from this. I stared at the photo, my hands trembling. For weeks, she had tried to paint me as the villain. For weeks, she had thrown fines, bans, lawsuits, and even the police at me. And all along, she had been the one who set fire to the very place she claimed to protect. Why? Jessica whispered. Why would she do that? The shorter man shut his notebook. People do desperate things for control. Or for money. Or both. That evening, word spread like wildfire. Ironic, considering. The investigators had confirmed it. Karen was responsible for the blaze. She'd tried to cash in on the insurance, tried to seize emergency powers, tried to frame me. The neighborhood erupted. Phones buzzed. The Facebook page exploded with comments. Can you believe it? All this time she blamed Ethan, and she did it. She could have killed someone. My son was at the park that night. By sunset, Karen's house was dark, her SUV gone. Rumors swirled that she'd skipped town. But the sheriff's office confirmed later that night she had been arrested at a relative's place 2 counties over. The news gave me relief, but also something heavier. Because while Karen might be gone, the damage she'd left behind wasn't. The clubhouse was still a charred shell. Neighbors were still divided, some ashamed they'd believed her lies, others too stubborn to admit they had. And hanging over it all was the lawsuit she had filed against me. Still active, still threatening, until her name was cleared from every court document. At the next community gathering, held on the tennis court since the clubhouse was gone, I stood before my neighbors again. We survived something ugly, I told them, but this isn't the end. What happens next matters more. We can rebuild, not just the clubhouse, but trust. We can turn Lake Ridge into the place it was meant to be. A community where we look out for each other, not tear each other down. People clapped. Some even cried. Mr. Harris raised his cane and shouted, "Hear, hear!" For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider fighting a system. I felt like a neighbor among neighbors. But even as the cheers swelled, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Don't think this is over. Karen was only the beginning. My blood went cold. I looked around at the smiling faces, the kids playing tag, the neighbors laughing. And I realized, someone else was out there. Someone who wanted this fight to continue. The text message glared at me like a red warning light on a dark road. Don't think this is over. Karen was only the beginning. I read it 3 times, my pulse thundering in my ears. My first thought was Karen had somehow managed to send it. But she was in custody, facing charges that could keep her behind bars for years. Then who? Who else could be pulling strings behind the scenes? Jessica leaned over my shoulder. What is it? I turned the phone so she could see. Her face drained of color. Ethan. This means she wasn't working alone. Mr. Harris, who had shuffled closer, squinted at the screen. There's always someone willing to hide in the shadows while another takes the fall, he muttered. Karen might have been loud, but maybe she was covering for someone bigger. I wanted to believe it was just an idle threat, some cruel prank. But the tightness in my chest told me otherwise. Over the next few days, the neighborhood buzzed with cautious optimism. With Karen exposed, many thought the storm had passed. But in the background, unease lingered. Who sent that message? Why claim Karen was only the beginning? The HOA board held an emergency meeting to fill her seat. I went, not because I wanted to join, but because I wanted to see who would step forward. The tennis courts were packed again, folding chairs lined up in neat rows. At the front, the remaining board members looked nervous, their clipboards trembling in their hands. "We'll take nominations," one of them said. Several names were tossed in: Jessica, Tom, even Mr. Harris, who chuckled and waved it off. But then, a man I didn't recognize raised his hand. Tall, broad-shouldered, with slicked-back hair and a sharp suit that didn't match the casual setting. "My name is Daniel Price," he said smoothly. "I moved here 3 months ago. I run a consulting firm downtown. I care about structure, order, standards, and I think I can restore balance after recent chaos." His words were practiced, his smile polished. Too polished. People nodded, murmuring approval. After Karen's disaster, Daniel sounded reasonable, professional even. But something about him made the hair on my arms rise. And then, when he caught my eye across the crowd, he gave me the smallest of smirks. A smirk that said, "I know exactly who you are. And I'm not afraid." That night I couldn't shake the feeling. I searched Daniel's name online. His consulting firm was real but vague. No clear website, just a LinkedIn page filled with buzzwords. Efficiency, governance, compliance. Then I found it. A news article from 2 years ago. A suburban HOA in another county had collapsed under lawsuits after residents accused the board of embezzlement. The president at the time? Daniel Price. My stomach dropped. He'd left just before the scandal hit. Never charged, never caught. And now, here he was, in Lake Ridge, sliding neatly into Karen's empty seat. The following day, I shared what I'd found with Jessica and Tom. "He's dangerous," Jessica said flatly. "This guy isn't here by accident." Tom scratched his head. "You think he was behind Karen, like pulling the strings?" I nodded. "The message I got. Karen was only the beginning. It fits. He probably used her as the face while he stayed in the background. Now he wants to finish what she started." Jessica slammed her hand on the table. "Then we stop him before he gets his hooks in deeper." "But how?" Karen was easy to expose. Her temper, her arrogance, her visor flashing like a warning sign. Daniel was different. He was calm, smooth. He knew how to look legitimate even while hiding rot underneath. The next HOA meeting confirmed my fears. Daniel had already won over half the board with promises of stability. He proposed new amendments, higher dues for rebuilding, stricter penalties to ensure order, and, worst of all, a clause granting the board power to fine without homeowner approval. "It's temporary," he said, his voice silky, "just until we recover from recent, unfortunate events." Some neighbors clapped, others frowned. I raised my hand. "This is exactly how it starts," I said loudly. "We give up control for stability, and suddenly we're living under rulers, not neighbors." Daniel's smile never wavered. "Ethan, wasn't it? You've caused enough disruption already. Perhaps you'd like to sit this one out and let the adults handle it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My fists clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. "This neighborhood doesn't belong to you," I said. "It belongs to all of us." Cheers erupted. But Daniel just smirked again, that same unnerving smirk, as if he had already planned his next move. Later that night, after the meeting, I found something taped to my front door. A single sheet of paper. In bold black letters. "You can't save them. Step aside, or you'll regret it." No signature, no number. Just the same icy threat as before. I stood there on my porch, paper fluttering in my hand, the summer night thick with cicadas. And I knew Karen had been a storm. But Daniel, he was the hurricane rolling in behind it. The paper in my hand felt heavier than it should have. "You can't save them. Step aside, or you'll regret it." Those words were a cold knife pressed against my chest. I stared at the threat, the porch light flickering above me, the night sounds of crickets and cicadas suddenly too loud, too sharp. For weeks I'd fought Karen. For weeks I'd taken her fines, her bans, her lawsuits, and somehow I'd survived. But Daniel, he was a different breed. Where Karen had been noisy, reckless, and obvious, Daniel was polished, patient, and calculating. The kind of man who didn't scream his threats in daylight. He whispered them in the dark and let other people do the screaming for him. And now he was whispering at my door. The next morning, I found Jessica on my porch with 2 coffees, her eyes rimmed with fatigue. She looked at the paper, her hands curling into fists. "This man doesn't scare me," she said. "He shouldn't scare you either." I gave her a tired smile. "He doesn't scare me for me. He scares me for everyone else. Because Daniel wasn't threatening just me. He was threatening the community we had all fought so hard to save from Karen's grip. That evening I called another gathering, this time at the lake's open field. No fences, no buildings, nowhere for Daniel to claim we were trespassing. Nearly the whole neighborhood came, the setting sun painting the water orange and gold. I stood in front of them, the threat still folded in my pocket. Karen was only the beginning, I said, my voice loud and steady. She tried to bury us in fines and bans, and when that failed, she tried to burn us down. But she didn't act alone. There's someone else, someone who wants control even more than she did. Gasps. Murmurs. People glanced around nervously, as if Daniel himself might step out of the shadows. Jessica stepped up beside me. We can't let history repeat itself. We already proved that when we stand together, no visor and no clipboard can control us. But now, we need to go further. She held up a clipboard of her own, one filled with fresh signatures. We're calling for a complete board reset, not just Karen gone, but everyone replaced. Fresh elections, new leadership, real transparency. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some clapped, some whistled. For the first time since Karen's fall, the hope felt stronger than the fear. But then headlights swept across the field. A sleek black car rolled up, window sliding down. And there he was. Daniel Price, suit pressed, smile calm, eyes sharp as glass. He didn't step out. He just leaned against the wheel and let his voice carry. "You think you can fight me?" he said, his tone smooth, almost amused. "I've done this before. I've outlasted louder crowds than yours. You'll burn yourselves out with anger, and then you'll beg for order. And when that day comes, I'll still be here." The crowd murmured, uneasy. His confidence was like poison in the air. I stepped forward, heart hammering, but voice steady. "No, Daniel," I said. "You won't be here, because we don't need rulers. We need neighbors. And the difference between us and you is simple. You see people as tools. We see people as family. And family doesn't bow down to threats." Cheers exploded again, louder than before. For the first time, Daniel's smile faltered. He revved his engine, sneered, and sped off into the night. The weeks that followed were hard. Daniel tried everything, flyers with lies about me, whispers about secret deals, even letters slipped under doors warning people not to trust Ethan's rebellion. But the more he pushed, the more the neighborhood pushed back. Jessica and Tom organized block captains. Mr. Harris, Kane, and all knocked on doors to encourage votes. Parents brought their kids to meetings, showing them what community really meant. And slowly, signature by signature, we reached the number we needed. A full board recall. Election day came on a crisp Saturday morning. The school gymnasium buzzed with voices, ballots shuffled into boxes, neighbors greeting each other with nervous smiles. When the votes were counted, it wasn't close. Daniel and his allies were swept out. In their place, neighbors like Jessica, Tom, and even the Chens stepped in, people who had lived the rules, suffered under them, and wanted something better. The gym erupted in cheers. Some cried. Some hugged. And for the first time, Lake Ridge felt whole again. Later that evening, I walked down to the pool. The water shimmered under the lights, calm and still. Kids splashed in the shallow end, laughter echoing against the tiles. Parents sat in deck chairs, smiling, relaxed. I knelt by the edge, ran my hand along the water, and thought about the first time I'd stood here, accused of trespassing in the very pool I'd helped build. Karen had tried to ban me. Daniel had tried to break me. But here I was, still standing. Jessica came to stand beside me, her smile soft. "Feels different now, doesn't it?" "Yeah," I said, watching the ripples fade. "It finally feels like home." But the lesson wasn't about winning. It wasn't about lawsuits or elections or even defeating people like Karen or Daniel. It was about kindness. About neighbors pulling together when fear tried to split them apart. About remembering that rules mean nothing if they crush the people they're supposed to serve. In the end, Lake Ridge didn't survive because of me. It survived because of all of us. And as I looked out at the pool, at the families laughing under the stars, I knew the truth. Kindness had won.